贺锦丽呢？你觉得他有独特的外交政策哲学吗？本节目做了好几集的，其实都质疑贺锦丽其实没有太多外交的论述，尤其在最近辩论里面，他似乎跟拜登的政策一模一样，好，包括对以哈啦、对俄乌战争啊、对中国的态度。如果他明年成为总统，他的外交政策到底跟拜登有什么不一样？如果拜登其实就是有他的缺点，是不是贺锦丽也会继承这样的缺点呢？
On a few important elements. One, she believes basically in the power of alliances, the power of relationships. So as you often heard Biden say, it's the U.S. relationships in Asia, in Europe, in North America that are essential to our security here. Very different than how Donald Trump sees it. Donald Trump is often talking about trying to extract payments from countries with which we have security relationships. Or he's talking about forcing them to pay more in order to get U.S. defense. Another thing that Kamala Harris believes is that there is at the core of international diplomacy, and this is a difference with Biden. Her belief is that the distinction is not between autocracy and democracy, which is the thing that he often talks about. Her belief is that rule of law is the central principle, even on the international scene. So when she talks about foreign policy disputes and issues and wars, she will often frame it as a matter of the law. So she talks about in Ukraine, the idea that Russia violated international law by forcibly redrawing the borders, by invading Ukraine. And that's how she frames it. She doesn't talk about it as the fact that it's an autocratic regime invading a democracy. That's not a language that means as much to her because she comes from a younger generation than Joe Biden. Joe Biden came out of the Cold War period. He sees things in those kinds of stark terms. She tends to say, well, the United States, frankly, has relationships with autocracies as well, like Saudi Arabia. So maybe it's not as if that's the clearest distinction. The clearest distinction in her mind is countries that observe the law and countries that violate the law. One of the reasons why she has had a growing relationship with the Philippines is because she believes that the Philippines has a strong claim in its dispute with China over China's borders in the South China Sea and elsewhere. So she regards things like that conflict, the territorial disputes in East Asia, as a matter of international law. And she it tends to organize her thinking and make her decision-making around that idea.
我想这一段的回答就足以让我们的国安团队进行一个真的是第一手的独家的回应，因为目前为止，包括台湾甚至美国的媒体，我都没有看过这么清楚的讲到贺锦丽跟拜登的政策最大的差别在哪里。他提到了，他说贺锦丽在乎的是法治，拜登在乎的是价值。因为贺锦丽是这个检察总长出身，大家都知道，所以贺锦丽对于法治 ，even 是在国际的环境之下，他很在乎。这个我们其实可以深入再讨论。那我也问他说，你觉得贺锦丽的外交路径是怎么养成？他的核心信念又是什么？如果我们把他跟川普拿来比，那个差异大不大？在哪里？
Two principal experiences when it comes to foreign policy. One was her time on the Senate Intelligence Committee when she was in the Senate. You know, she was coming from a period when she had been working in state politics. She didn't really have much experience in foreign affairs. But then she gets to the Senate and is immediately put into this very exclusive club, which is the group that has access to the most sensitive intelligence. Not all senators are able to see that. So she spent her time, really about 3 years working on that issue. At the same time, on the Judiciary Committee. Then she comes to the White House and immediately gets involved in every meeting in the Situation Room. She is involved, for instance, she has been in the room in the Oval Office for every phone call that the U.S. president has had with Bibi Netanyahu of Israel. So her political and geopolitical education has been robust and rapid. And what's different fundamentally about how she thinks about it from how Donald Trump thinks about it is that Donald Trump does not operate from a principle that is enduring. He operates from an idea that everything is a transaction. There is a cost, a price that you can attach to anything. So as you've heard him talk about things like Ukraine or even Taiwan, he will often say, well, what is the price? What is the cost? What is the economic implication for the United States? He's not talking about fundamental universal principles of rule of law or of the sanctity of individual states. From his perspective, those are less important. You've heard him talk very clearly about his personal affection for Kim Jong-un, his personal affection for Vladimir Putin, his desire to be liked by Xi Jinping. This is a core of his personality. And Kamala Harris does not have any personal desire to be friends with Kim Jong-un or Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping. That is not in her playbook. So I think if there is a Harris administration, you should expect that it will have more in common with the Biden and the Obama administrations than it does with anything from the Trump era.